All right, let me put up the title of our talk. So here we go. Uh, little knowledge bomb for today. Today we're doing distraction, which is kind of attention part two. And I'm gonna crack this out really fast because you can't see that. That's cool. Now you can see it. All right. Yeah, we can. So we did attention part one. It was very vague because attention is a very vague topic, but we're going to be way more specific today because we're talking about something specific. I guess technically we did multitasking, so maybe this is part three. I don't know. Um, so distraction is a very easy concept to understand. Everybody probably already knows what it means to be distracted, but to make it super clear, there's really distraction is always contextual. So there's really only there's two pieces you need, right? You need to know what your goal is currently. Let's just go ahead and type that in. Goal. And then say where your attention is deployed, and we'll do the circle. And that's where attention is, right? So if if your goal is to focus on your homework and your attention is deployed on your homework, you're not distracted, right? It's clear. My point is you need a goal. So if you're just sitting around doing nothing, you don't have a goal, it's hard to say you're distracted. So that's something to keep in mind. Now the way now you might think now attention is complicated because there is you can be focused on something external like homework, or you can be focused on something internal like you're trying to figure something out in your head, right? So one way people divide this out is to talk about two types of stimuli, which is external and internal. Wow, and I can spell. That's great. And let's make that nice and big. Okay, cool, right? That makes sense, right? And then people can break this down further by whether or not something is it's a two-dimensional axis, so you could flip it, but whether something is, and we'll just do it down here, something is a goal or not, which means it's a distraction, right? And then let's do it here again. Goal or not. Now this is a funky way to divide it, to be honest, because if you're only focused on, I don't know, something internal, you have an internal goal, then everything external could theoretically be a distraction. But the point is, there are two ways to divide this stuff up, which is whether things are whether things are they're goal related or not, and that right away you need to have a goal. So this gets really complicated if, say, you have multiple goals and you're multitasking, which is why multitasking is interesting, because then when you're focused on one goal, you're trying to task switch back and forth. The other goal becomes a distraction. It becomes noise to all the neural processes that are trying to do something. So if, for instance, you're trying to have a conversation and you're trying to do your homework at the same time, the conversation becomes noise, not signal. It becomes an interference when you're focusing on your homework. And so when you switch back to the conversation, the homework is now interference. The homework is noise. And we covered multitasking earlier, and there's not really a great way to fuse those two tasks. So you're trying to do task switching. So that's why this stuff is complicated. So if you have multiple goals, then you have to set sort of multiple boxes for that. But one way to think about it again is goals and then internal external. So internal external is the reason internal external is interesting, because I really didn't give it a good argument why they divide it like this at all, is because it's an explanation of why, for instance, you might play music while you're doing homework. Because your goal is external, say I'm going to put the box as a goal, that's your homework, right? Let's do it right now. Homework, right? And then you have another box. You have other visual external stimuli, like your phone, right? Phone. I shouldn't. I'm define my own conventions here. Let's make distractions a triangle or something, so that you guys can. So the goal of the box, just so it's clear. I should probably do different colors, but it's fine. Phone, right? And then your brain is always managing both these things. Like your brain is managing is deploying tension externally and internally. And really what it's doing is more complicated than this. It's deploying it to the processing related to your ears, the processing related to your vision, and then the further upstream processes that are more internal, which are thoughts and more abstract concepts and reconstructed old memories that are flashing in your head, right? But from our perceptual point of view, we have external, internal. There's the outside world, there's like your phone going off, there's the book you should be reading, and then there's the internal, which is like rumination and thought. So I'm going to use triangles for the distraction again. So let's say this is that memory of you I don't know, peeing your pants in middle school or something, some distracting memory. All right, and then now and then in theory you could have a goal, but you don't have one internally. You're trying to focus on something external, which is like reading. And ideally what you would be doing is reading your book or doing your homework, and then this would be thinking about your homework. But one trick humans have naturally figured out is so you want to be thinking about like studying or whatever you're doing internally. So anyway, this is just a schema of how we think about distraction, so we can define distraction in cognitive neuroscience. And the whole point is, once you've defined it this way, what we can do in the lab is give you a specific task and then see if you're on task or not, and see like what your brain is doing. Because what your brain does efficiently is say something very simple. Let's just stick with external and one goal. Is if I tell you to I'm off screen. I'm sorry, people. Let me scroll down a little bit. Okay. Let's extend the whiteboard a little bit. All right. So sorry, not to lose my flow here. So let's do the simplest example. We have one goal and we're only external, and our participants don't have any internal rumination or anything. Just to understand the concept at its most basic. It's like understanding the single transistor, so then you can understand the whole computer, right? The idea is, if you have a task that is like it's like a Where's Waldo, for instance, right? And I'm trying to, and there's a bunch of things in here. I'm gonna pick a different color. I'm just gonna start putting a bunch of whatevers. And and especially if they're like moving around, you're looking at a video, and I'm telling you to pay attention to this one yellow thing, right? This entire image is to some extent being projected on the back of your head, everything in the circle, but your attention and your brain is figuring out this is the part that's relevant and enhancing the strength of which these neurons fire, and sort of suppressing the strength of all the other neurons. And that it does that because of a willful effort on your part to pay attention to this. So the prefrontal cortex, which is where your goals are, like we're talking about up here, once you've decided what your goals are, at least for for those next few moments, it then directs the rest of your brain. And the efficiency by which it does it obviously varies from person to person. Obviously varies whether you've been caffeinated, or you're taking amphetamines, or you're just well rested, or you have good brain health and all this other stuff. But when it's working well, it can very effectively ignore the rest of the stuff. And you've probably seen these videos like you guys probably seen this, right? The the invisible gorilla. They love using this one in psychology classes video. I'll put this up really fast. We won't watch the whole thing. I'll just show you I'm going to spoil it for you. Spoiler alerts. Selective attention test, right? So it's that they're telling you count how many times the player's wearing white pass the basketball. So you're trying to, here's the players in white. I see 3 of them. There's one there. I'm trying to pay attention to this girl. She's passed the basketball to this guy. He's passing the basketball to this guy, right? And you're like, oh, that's the black one. No, the white one, the white one. Okay, you're counting, right? Now, what they do is they actually have like this guy in a gorilla mask walk by. See? And if you're paying attention to this, and it's probably bigger on your screen and stuff, you completely miss the gorilla. Most people do. Because they ask you how many passes did you count, and you're focused on that. That's the goal. The prefrontal cortex has been given, so it's directed all the processing of your visual cortex, which again is like a third of your brain. It's billions of neurons. So it's like a conductor. It's trying to direct this whole really powerful but mess of computational power that's in your head, and most people will not even see the gorilla because they have actually effective selective attention. So anyway, so selective attention, which I could throw that verb up here, and distraction are the same thing. And so and this I'm ending the lesson pretty much here, but I'll give you 2 takeaways that are more hopefully relevant. One thing to think is if you're being distracted by your cell phone while you're working, it might be that you've actually deliberately cued yourself to pay attention to that sort of alerting sound. Like you may want to, be alerted if something happens. So there's sort of this little part of your attention that's deliberately kind of checking in on your auditory cortex or your peripheral vision when your cell phone flashes or whatever. Like that. Like it's designed to be distracting so it can alert you. And so and a further consequence of that idea is that when people are, say, good multitaskers, like they constantly have these alerts going off and like, okay, my phone, okay, I do this a lot. You probably guys see me. I play games and I switch back to something I'm doing. That's fine and all, but what you're doing is training your brain to pay attention to external stimuli. So in this schema, you're when you're working on internal things, you're training your brain to put a few more say feelers out on here, so you're not as focused internally, which is why it's good to like get away from devices, and you can go on meditation retreats, or you could just get rid of Wi-Fi in your bedroom or whatever. But my point is, it's because of this. It's because you're actually training your prefrontal cortex to like almost like a security person, like making rounds on a building at night, like to make rounds. And then the second thing I think is interesting that probably is worth mentioning before I wrap this lesson up, because I do want to keep these short, is that the reason, like I kind of never got to this, but the reason, say you listen to music when you're studying, the idea being that you have multiple, is this all on the screen? Yeah. You have multiple external distractions. People, like you go to a coffee shop, people are walking around. There's conversational noise, but it's kind of not, it's indistinct. You can't really hear what people are saying. And then people will play music. It's all good because what you're trying to teach your brain, in a sense, because you're focused on something, say, internal, like you're trying to memorize or you're trying to learn a math concept or something. You're almost like overwhelming your attention processes from all this bandwidth, this is all irrelevant. This is all like noise. This is just white noise. So you can try really hard to start paying attention, but it's so overwhelming. There's so much of it, and it's so relentless and constant that your brain's like, screw it, I'm just going to pay attention to this. And I think, to me, that's one reason why people go to, before the lockdowns at least, go to coffee shops to actually study. So I'll end it there. We'll hit on these concepts again in the future. That ends selective attention distraction. Once again, I'll throw these up on my YouTube. I'll try to get better at doing these. And yeah, that's it.